Well, welcome to this episode of ISV Talks. And on this episode, I have Bob McAdam from Taslet. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be back here on the prestigious ISV Talks.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And I know we just got back from Summit last week in San Antonio, Texas. And so we thought it would be good just to do a recap of what we saw, what we heard, what we learned, and also where it's going to be next year, too.
Yeah, it was a great time. San Antonio, if you've not been, is a really wonderful city. My Danish colleagues at Tasklet stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which is
Yeah.
around the corner from the convention center. So I was over there a lot, and the Riverwalk is right underneath that hotel. So lots of opportunities to advance my networking opportunities and have nice dinners with my Danish mates on the Riverwalk that week. It was really a fun time,
Yeah.
and they all loved it.
Oh, they hadn't been there before. So
Right.
did you say that you all came in early because in Tampa, where your office
Yeah.
is there, it was threat
Right.
hurricanes and
So I have two Danish colleagues that were supposed to fly to Tampa, and we diverted them directly to San Antonio because of Hurricane Milton. We had the golf tournament with World Max and Netstock on that Saturday, and I'm like, if I don't get out of here, if I don't leave early, I'm never going to get there, right? Because when they close the
yeah.
Tampa airport, the planes leave, and just because it reopens a few days later doesn't mean there's an airplane to take you somewhere. So I got a
Mhm.
couple of standbys to Atlanta and then San Antonio, and spent a few extra days in San Antonio with my mates that we sent over early from Denmark. So yeah, I was there like 10 days, and I could be stuck in worse places than San Antonio. I can tell you that. But it was a little hectic getting out of town before the hurricane.
In fact, I think they did say that did impact some of the like academy classes and things like that where people couldn't
People
get
couldn't
there
get
because
there.
of weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, how many people did they announced, I think how many? It was at least 5,000 or did you hear?
Yeah, I would say at least 5,000, maybe
Mhm.
5,500. It felt similar to Charlotte, which was the 2023 site. If you ask me, there was a few more people in San Antonio than Charlotte, so you're seeing some moderate growth.
The venue, the Henry Gonzalez Conference Center that's right
Yeah,
there in the Riverwalk, it's pretty amazing facility, but it's a lot of
yeah,
walking. That's all I can say. I was
it is
glad
walking.
good shoes because
You
it was
get your
a lot.
steps in, and you work off all those Riverwalk dinners that we had. Oh,
Right? Yeah, and there's lots to do in San Antonio, like the Riverwalk, the Alamo. I know that some people did receptions at the Alamo or had tours
right.
over there. There was a lot going on and
Yeah,
a lot of advanced networking, right?
that's right. Got to have your
Right?
advanced networking opportunities at Summit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, what were some of the events that you attended?
Well, let's see. I, of course, went to the Power GP Online party on Wednesday evening, and I saw you there as well. And that was a big hit, as it
Was
always is. I had
yeah.
my Fargo Technical Conference shirt from 1999 on, celebrating the fact that it's A, 25 years ago, and B, it still fits me. I also went to the Rewind party right before that, which was hosted by Ellipse Solutions and Sonic Commerce, and forgive me for getting the others. That was a fun time. People were dressed up like in 80s clothes, and that was a good time. That was near the Riverwalk as well, or right on it. I also
Mhm.
went to Expert Logic party the night before. I had dinner at a couple of very nice restaurants there on the Riverwalk with my Danish colleagues and some partners that we took out. So yeah, every night was
Oh,
just full.
there was something. I know on Tuesday night was the BC Bash. I went to
Yeah, the BC bash. Right. I know. I missed that, and I feel bad because I
yeah.
wanted to go. I just had a late dinner, but
Yeah.
I heard it
Oh,
went
you missed
well.
it. It was really fun. They had lots of loud music, disco music or music going on. It was a great time to see the BC community and, of course, a lot of the we see a lot of the GPers also now on Business Central Space. So
Sure.
a lot of people I recognize and knew, some new friends there as well. So it
A
was really
lot
good.
of
A
familiar
really good
faces.
party. I went to before that a couple of events. There was a Stratus Cloud Alliance or partner event, which was part of the Velasio Master Bar program. They had a nice little, get together happy hour. And then I went to Buckhorns, which is kind of interesting location. It has like a bar right on the Riverwalk. It must have been there since
Right.
I don't know 1800s. It's been there a long time. But they have this crazy museum upstairs and downstairs you can walk through. If you like taxidermy, this is your place to go.
Nice.
Lots of different animals and but also had kind of sort of a sideshow vibe, like if you like the
Right.
crazy house mirrors and things you could walk through and they
Oh, those are cool. Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool. And they had instructor teaching line dancing, which was a great warm up for the BC bash.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
On Sunday, there was that partner marketing event for partners only. And then Red Maple sponsored a happy hour at a rooftop bar around the corner near the Hilton right afterwards.
And that's a crazy story. That Fairmount Hotel, and I learned this because I went on the riverboat tour. That building was where the Marriott sits now, and they moved it over to its current location. And yeah, isn't that crazy? That
Yeah.
hotel was actually moved. So anyway, yeah, we went to that too. That was fun because it was on the rooftop there, and
Yeah. It's a
it
nice
was it was
evening. Weather
nice
was
evening.
perfect.
I know at the GP Online party, of course, they had the karaoke scene, which is always fun and it gets crazier as the evening goes on. One of the highlights for me was Mark Rockwell sang an original song that I think it was called, was it Ode to Microsoft or something?
Right. Yeah. I don't remember what he called it, but he sang a portion of it during the conference and then an
Yeah.
unabridged version, shall we say, at the Power GP Online party,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a highlight for sure. So kind of pivoting from all the parties and advanced networking.
of which you could go on and on because you were doing so many in San Antonio.
I was. We were like hitting all the different venues. Of course, there's always good information and a lot of interesting information at all the general sessions. And there was, the BC general session, that was Tuesday, right? There
Right.
was the GP general session and the FNO session, and I went to all three of them. So it was kind of interesting. I don't know, you got to either or both of those, the GP and BC ones, but it was interesting to kind of see what they had to say. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts of those two sessions.
Okay. Well, kind of similar, right? With FNO and BC, you have a lot of new stuff coming out with Wave 2. So a lot of time is spent going over all the new functionality. And you and I were talking earlier before we started recording that the reactions from the attendees aren't always as enthusiastic, at least with the BC side, as you might think, right? You would think that when new
Yeah,
functionality gets rolled out, everybody gets excited. At the FNO one they did, at the GP one they did, but
right.
BC
Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah, I leaned over at my husband and said, they're so quiet. Like, I think
Yeah,
the only thing that I noticed that got an applause was the feature where they took a overlay of like a theme, like a Halloween theme, to merge it with a document, like an invoice document, and that got applause. So I was like,
yeah, exciting.
yay.
Yeah,
And Terry Healy did a great job of presenting all new features on 18.7, which is the latest release of Dynamics GP. And of course, there's
right.
always, more enthusiasm in that group, I think, in general, than the BC group about the new features. But what were
Yeah.
your thoughts?
So the GP general session was obviously different because it started out basically after they did the All Stars, which, by the way, John Arnold and
Yeah.
John Kirsch and Dave Feenstra were the three GPUG All Star Award winners. And all three of
Yay.
those guys, I can tell you, having run
Oh,
GPUG for several years, are way overdue for having won that
yes.
award. They're all really talented, and they could have won it 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They really could have. So I was very happy to see those three
Yeah.
winners. So after they did the GPUG All Stars, which by the way used to be a really fun thing to ramp up for. People used to really work hard to get voted for that.
Yeah.
John Seifert brought Mike Morton out, and they talked about the announcements that Microsoft made around Dynamics GP end of life. And it was, I don't think Mike Morton said anything during that segment of the general session that was different or it was newsworthy to me, because of course we nerds in this space have been following this stuff for a long time. But let's give John Seifert some credit. He puts himself up on stage with Mike. He makes sure that the proper information is rolled out. We're not having any kerfuffles on stage like 2 years ago in Orlando. And it was John Seifert that had the Dynamic Communities podcast interview with Mike the morning they made the announcement so that the news would come out and it wouldn't be a huge curveball for end users once they
Yeah.
got to San Antonio. So I give John a lot of credit. He's out in front. He's trying to do his job as CEO at DCI. so that the GP users are not getting clobbered like a couple years ago.
No, definitely. And I appreciate that he asked some tough questions and,
Yes.
clarity and transparency. So I appreciated that. And I feel like it was kind of a calming effect. Like if you kind of came to that feeling a little bit anxious, like maybe you heard from your partner or
Right.
maybe you heard the news from Microsoft or somewhere else. It was good to hear, like, hey, you've got time. There's definitely, 5 years to end of support. You've still got a year and a half past that. And it
Yep.
was also kind of like, hey, it depends on how things go. It kind of
Mhm.
sounded like there might be a little bit of opening for in the future, maybe some things like maybe we'll get a year-end update in 2029 versus it
Yeah.
ending in 2028. So
Yeah.
that was good news. And
Yeah.
also listening to partners and they asked for feedback. So I
Sure.
appreciated hearing that as well.
Hmm.
So that
Yeah,
was
I
really,
agree. If you're a
yeah.
proactive partner in the GP space and you knew that news was coming out September 25th, you had a couple of weeks before they all got to San Antonio, they being end users, to communicate with them or make arrangements to have dinner or drinks with them in San Antonio to discuss all this and start formulating a plan. Maybe not complete one in its entirety, but get the discussion started. What do you want
Yeah.
to do? What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Here's our opinion. What are you thinking, Mr. or Ms. End User? You've got 5 years. That is a decent amount of time, but let's start the conversation and figure out what makes sense for you as an end user. How complex is your environment?
Right.
Do you want to stay on GP? There's a million questions. And you just alluded to something else there a moment ago. That is, there's a lot of questions that were brought up by partners in some of those town hall meetings that Mike Morton hosted about licensing, right? The questions were
Mhm.
like framed around the fact that maybe customers have already told their partners, we want to stay on GP.
Right?
Can I keep buying a license? And what about subscription? All that sort of stuff. Right. So
Yeah.
the point you just made a minute ago, I'm not sure, like, getting a year-end tax update at the end of calendar year 2029 that fits the 2030 calendar year. I think Microsoft hasn't necessarily thought about that just yet because they're just assuming September 29 will get here and that'll be it. But in reality, there's probably
Yeah.
more people that will stick around than what they expect, shall we say.
Yeah. Yes. A key phrase, which is what policies are
Policies are subject to
subject
change.
to
That's
change.
right. Right. At the end of the day,
So,
Microsoft is the publisher
yeah,
and they own the code and they can do whatever they
yeah,
want. They can
they can do
extend the
whatever.
time, they can shorten it,
Yeah.
they own it, and they can do what they want. And hopefully they won't throw any curveballs at end users or the partner community. But
Yeah.
all that is, like you said, subject to change.
It is subject to change. So yeah, so that is one thing that was happening kind of by invite only was there were partner town halls that the Microsoft team basically held and did kind of
Yep.
Q&A and answering question. And so a lot of partners attended one or the other meetings or had one-on-one meetings with Microsoft during the week. There was
Right.
still a lot of questions going on with partners, so it's going to take a little while for people to kind of wrap their mind around it. And but
Mhm.
like you said, I think there were a lot of questions about licensing, which tells me, hey,
Right.
I've got customers that are going to be on it for a while. Can they still
Yep.
buy a license?
Yep. And those are really good questions. A lot of people ask, if it's October 1, 2029, can I buy a seat
Yeah,
can my customer buy a seat? And I asked a question, a friend of mine at Velocio not 6 months ago, can I buy a seat for Dynamics SL? And she told me, yes, you can.
yeah, of
So I mean,
course.
I tend to think that if you're current on your enhancements, and that's of course super important,
Mhm.
and you want to buy a license on October 1, 2029, chances are pretty good that you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, I think Microsoft's just surprised everybody isn't just jumping up and moving to Business Central or F&O. They're like they don't really quite understand
Right.
why there's this group of partners and customers that are hesitant. But you know what? It works. It works well. Like,
Yeah.
why do I need to change? So,
And how
mhm,
many partners have been in the space like you and me for a long time? Judy
right?
Thomas at TM Group just celebrated 40 years, right? When
Oh,
Mama
right.
Kim retired, she'd been around for like 37 or 38 years. There are a lot of people that have been in this GP ecosystem a long time. and pivoting
Yeah.
from that when it's been your career and you have happy customers is
Yeah.
hard to do. It really is.
It's hard to do. All right. Well, kind of transitioning from that, then we
Sure.
had our session that
Yeah.
you and myself and Fawaz Hussein from Notice and Tiffany Allen from Corpay, we did our session right after that, after lunch. And we
Right.
even had to meet right before that to make sure we didn't miss any information in case
I
there
know.
was any subject to change kind of announcements. And so tell us about how that went.
So we've done, you and me and Tiffany and Fawaz, a wonderful foursome, I will say. We all had a fun time doing this, and we've done it several times at other events, not just this one, talking about the future of GP and making sure that end users have all the facts in front of them so they can make the best decision
Yeah.
for their business. Right. And then when this news came out on Wednesday, September 25th, the four of us met on Friday the 27th, threw our entire PowerPoint out the window and said, okay, we got to totally start over and we need to get this in right away because the show's coming up in a couple of weeks and we've got to present, right? No
Yeah.
more myth busting. The myths have been busted. So we tweaked our PowerPoint and tried to make it more interactive because we figured there would be some questions and or comments
Yeah.
coming from the audience.
We
And
had no
overall
idea.
it went pretty good, I would say. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a good, pretty full room, not standing room only like a couple years ago in Orlando, but a pretty good sized room, and just trying to make sure that people who have questions about licensing and other things and year end updates and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff could get as good answers as what we've heard. Because, like you, I attended both of those partner town hall meetings and I'm listening to the questions that partners are asking. And we try to convey as much of that news to the GP end users as we could. Because, yeah, 5 years is a long time, but
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like most of them have been procrastinating. And now that there's a date certain,
Yeah.
they're certainly thinking about it more so, or will stop the procrastinating and begin discussing future plans if they decide to change or if they decide that they'll stay the same with their partner and go from there.
So here's the poll that we did, the live poll we did during our session.
We're asking the end users, what's your plan? And 81% have been evaluating and will continue to do so, or they're going to stay put. That's their evaluation. They're staying put. So that kind of made sense to me. I feel as
Yeah.
if a third of, let's say 30% of existing GP users today will probably be on Jeep October 1, 2029, right? In 5 years. And the
Yeah.
rest will probably redeploy to a Dynamics 365 ERP or potentially something else. But it
Hmm.
was interesting to see 12% are now going to stop procrastinating because they've been putting it off.
Yeah.
And another 12%, for some odd reason, never had the idea of making a change even on their radar. I think that 24%, I don't know. The bottom one was really an eye opener. I didn't think anybody would say change wasn't
Hmm.
on my radar. That's different than staying put, you know?
Yeah. Well, now that we have a date, I guess, announced, it does put kind of a timeline, right? And
Yep.
so I guess it is one of those, we're procrastinators, right? In human
Sure.
nature.
I totally agree. And when you're
Yeah.
talking about redeploying, it's a lot of work, right? It was a
A
lot
lot
of
of work.
work to deploy it the first time and then over time build processes and hopefully document those and add ISVs to fill gaps. So
Yeah.
it's always a work in progress and you're always training new people or what have you. And there's a lot of time and effort put into making your business run in an optimal fashion. And now Microsoft's coming in and saying, okay, you need to, you've got 5 years to do something else, and
Right.
that's a lot.
And I do feel like, during our session that, we did have some questions from people that either they weren't aligned with their partner. So obviously it sounded like
Right.
you get a new partner, or maybe they want to actually even expand their users or executive management want to stay on GP and they want to expand it. So what do we think about that? And kind of a range of answers. I liked what Carrie Hadley said is, hey, you know what? This is a good opportunity to reevaluate your processes and improve
Mhm.
processes and clean up your data. Maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of re-examine how we do things
Right.
because maybe you can optimize it right now.
And let's face it, if you can do that sort of cleanup, that would make a
Yeah,
redeployment easier, right? Because you know all the tools that are in your business box and how they need to be in place
yeah,
someplace else if you choose to redeploy. So Carrie's advice was solid as usual. And if it's going to make a redeployment easier, then yeah, I would certainly take that time and do your homework in your existing
yeah.
system.
I also liked what David Musgrave said is if you decide to stay on GP, that's a risk too, right? There's a
Yeah.
risk in that, something might break. It might not be supported if something in Outlook or Office changes or in SQL, and then you have maybe kind of a big risk that you might have an issue that Microsoft won't support. So,
Right. Just like, and you're right. Mr. Musgrave did have an excellent point. That's what I'm calling death by a thousand cuts, stuff
yeah,
that happens around GP that isn't necessarily happening within the application itself, isn't supported or has a fix or some sort of edit that
right.
causes an issue in GP, like Word templates, right? We just had this whole Outlook thing that needed a remedy. Maybe the next thing that comes down the pike affects Word templates in GP. And it's nothing that changed in the application. It was something
Yes.
the Office team did with Word.
Yeah.
But they're not thinking
Yeah.
about if this is going to break something in GP. They're just
Yeah.
trying to make changes in their application.
I mean, if you think
Yeah,
about Microsoft in a lot of ways hasn't really been providing a lot of support, let's say, or some
right.
people are operating with just their Microsoft partner, not Microsoft, because so they haven't been leaning on Microsoft, but it is a risk. It is definitely a risk, but so is
Yeah,
implementing something new. I mean, I
sure.
think a whole new implementation, there's plenty of people that go out there and start implementation and have a lot more challenges than they realize with
Yep.
resources or technology or something else. So there's risk no matter what. It definitely is a point in time you probably need to take a look. And we did have our friends from the longevity team, Power GP Online. That's a great
Right.
option too. And they had their whole team dressed in these leather jackets. Like, wasn't that a great vibe? I just loved it. They had the ride or die theme and
Right.
t-shirts, and down in the kind of GP tech medic area, they had the lounge or the hub
Yep.
all decked out with these big artwork that had like, kind of this whole vibe about kind of, it felt like a little bit of rebellion, right?
Better believe it did. And you could tell
Hmm.
that Chris and his crew were ready for this announcement because it felt like blogs were coming out every
Yeah.
day or
Oh, a
every
lot of
other day
blogs.
between the time the announcement was made, September 25th, and the time
Yeah.
we should.
They were,
They were ready.
yeah.
They know it's coming and they're
Yeah.
ready to
Yeah.
support their customers and support prospective customers who like GP and want to stay put. And Chris is the one place at Power GP Online and Longevity where people
Yeah.
know he's been waving the flag, and it's a safe space, if you will, for lack of a
Yeah.
better term for
In
people.
fact, I ran into a customer that has attended our panel sessions, each of the summits, and he asked me, "Hey, have you heard about this Power GP Online? Maybe I should check it out because I want to stay on GP." And he's the CFO. And he's
Okay.
like, "I don't wanna move," and I was like, "Yes, you should definitely go talk to the
Yeah.
Power GP Online team because it is definitely a great option. They will support GP customers. They have great secure environment and lots of new features too." So I
Right.
was like, "Definitely check that
Yeah.
out." So,
They've added some
but
cool stuff to GP, and Chris is totally
they
committed, right? He's
yeah,
probably been told a
there's
hundred times by some or various number of people at Microsoft, don't do this. And he continues to go the direction he wants to go. He's a true believer. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
yeah, definitely. So we didn't touch about the expo hall, but just briefly, I know you were there, your
Yes.
company had a booth. How'd that go?
It went great. So for the first time, Pasca's been attending Summit for a couple 3 years, but it's a Danish company, so the investment in Summit this year was finally bigger. We got a 20 by 20 booth, which is 6.1 by 6.1 meters for those of you from out of town. And it was tons of fun. We got to design it the way we wanted it. It was a great place to gather. We had a session Tuesday morning and then had really good traffic Tuesday afternoon to follow up on it. So the whole expo experience for my Danish mates and I was really, really good.
Yeah.
I complained mildly, of course, to my friend John Seifert that we needed a longer expo. 2 days wasn't enough.
2
And
days
he
is
said
not
next
enough.
year it'll go back to normal. So we get 2.5 or almost
Yeah.
3 days expo. There's a lot of time setting up and planning to make your booth the coolest place in the hall. And you can really feel the pulse of the show at the expo. So while the expo is open, I was in there a great deal because that's where you're going to find people. That's where you're going to run into friends. That's, you can have an advanced networking opportunity, accompaniment in the evenings. And it's just, the
Yeah.
expo is a great place, and you could tell that it's a great place because when I talked to John Seifert later on about 2025, trying to get a booth in the next year's expo hall is really, really difficult because they were going like hotcakes. They really were. We got
Hmm.
ours, by the way. We're good.
You got your spot. That's perfect.
Yeah,
And
we
I think
did.
this year you had a good spot. You were right next to Corpay, which they had a lot of activity with their t-shirt printing operation. You can kind of get a custom
Yeah,
like San
I
Antonio
really like that
t-shirt.
idea.
That
That was a
was like,
cool idea. There was a line at the Corpay booth with those t-shirts all the time. When I first saw that idea, I was like, oh man, that's kind of dopey, but turned out to
no.
be great. You have to
People
wait
love
in
that.
line for your shirt so you can talk to someone from Corpay
Talk
about
to,
the solution,
yeah,
like Tiffany.
great. You could talk to several different people because a lot of
They
time to
did a
wait in
nice
line.
job. We were between
Yeah, they
Corpay
did.
and the puppies. How could we go wrong?
Okay, yes, you got. Now, how did you pick that booth right next to the puppies? That was amazing.
Yeah, I know. I figured
Yeah.
these things out. That's a good traffic builder. The puppies get lots of traffic.
Yeah, so there was a little, yeah, so puppy snug, so the summit, the Dynamics Communities had a puppy snuggles booth. So you can go in there and take a break and play with a puppy or hold a puppy. Those puppies must have been exhausted.
Yeah, I'm sure they were
Yeah.
overstimulated like crazy.
Yeah, they had little breaks where they put them in their kennel and then let them rest,
Yeah.
and just all kind of looked like they fell over on each other. They were tired,
They
but
slept
yeah,
well each night of summer,
they
that's for
slept
sure.
great. And I just feel like, okay, so here's the thing. It was too short of time. There was
Yeah,
not enough time. I think I started to cry on the second day because I realized there's no way I can get through this entire hall and
right,
see everybody, right? Because
right.
it's
There's
just
so
too
many
many.
booths, right? 250 exhibitors. It's
Yeah.
impossible to get to all of them. And you have a lot of customers that are,
Oh,
involved with Dynamics Connections, and you want to stop
yeah.
by and say hi and say thank you. And it's a big
Yeah.
place. It's hard to get to them all.
It was really hard to see them, and I wanted to meet new people too. So anyway,
Mhm.
my husband's there. He was doing a great job of meeting some new people, and but I just there was no way.
I've been told that next year we'll go back to the usual schedule and get our additional expo time and time when sessions are not in. We always, when sessions aren't in, the traffic in the expo is really good. And that's where you, again, feel the pulse of the show is
Yeah.
in that expo hall. It's fun. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like even some people had double booths. Like I saw RSM, they had a community booth with a special AI, and
Yep.
it was actually really cool. It took a picture of your face and then drew an outline of your face and put it in like in this big board. It was part of a overall, I don't know what you call it, picture. Anyway, this
Oh,
said community. It was really cool. I sat and watched that for a while, and that was really neat. And then they also had the regular booth too, right? So it was like,
right. I think
I
Avalera had their fancy booth, a two-story booth. Then they had the Texas Lounge and they had the Wellness
yeah,
Massage Lounge.
right.
Man,
But that one, the one with the cowboy boots had like, a little margarita, and then they had,
right.
a picture booth, where you can get a picture. They had an artist there, they had karaoke. There was
Yeah.
always something kind of activities going on. That's the other thing is I was easily distracted by all of these things. So I'd stop and go, wow, that's pretty neat. And it wasn't just, I'd say it was probably a level above in that there were these other activities to do, right? Yes,
Community
that's where the
Summit
lessons
Legends.
were
Yeah.
announced. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Community Summit Legends were announced. Each year they do about a dozen legends. I was lucky enough to be named in the first class, which was lots of fun. That was
Yeah.
2021. And each year they add about a dozen or so. So I get together with some legendary friends of mine like Frank Vukovic at Delinea and also Mark Polino, who's at Delinea. And we kind of get a front row seat, with Carrie Hadley and the rest of them. And we watch the legends come up. And Giuseppe's the host, and he does a good job. And they go through the names, and they get one from GP, and they get one from CE, and they get one from F and they get ones from all the different UGs. And
Yeah.
it's fun to watch people who have been showing up at this show for a long time.
Yeah.
In GPUG Summit's case, this was my 17th GPUG Summit. So I mean, this thing's been
Wow.
going a long time now. So yeah, it's fun to watch some of the people that have helped make this event what it is be
Mm-hmm.
recognized. It's fun.
Yeah, and there were some really well deserving people like Terry Healy. Oh my gosh, like she is a legend. Like you, there's
In the
no doubt
GP
she should
community.
be
Yeah.
awarded that from Microsoft. Carrie
Yep.
Hadley,
Yep.
who's been heading up the GP content committee and helping with so much on the GPUG. And Fawaz Hussein, our friend from Notice, was also recognized. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been good. And, he's a young man compared to you and me, but he's been to Summit a
Yeah,
bunch of times over the years
yeah.
and
I
certainly
think
helped
he
make
was
it what
the
it's been.
most surprised.
Yeah, I think
You
he
know,
probably was too. But
like,
you think about all the
uh,
sessions he's done over the
yeah,
years, whether it's panel discussions with you and me and Tiffany, or partner solution showcases on behalf of Notice, where he's been for several years.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a
Well,
Summit regular, and he knows how to advance his
yeah.
networking opportunities as well as anybody.
Yes,
I
he
promise.
does.
I promise you.
Yes, he does. Well, let's talk about just to wrap up. Where is next year going to be held? What are the dates for the Dynamics Community Summit 2025?
So, Community Summit 2025 will be held at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando, right here in Central Florida, October 19th through the 23rd. So, October 19th is
Okay.
a Sunday. They'll probably have, the usual kind of things, academy and
Yeah.
all that, on maybe some partner events. And then it will likely kick off on Monday the 20th. That's just me guessing based on past interest. Or maybe they'll do some more academy, kick it off Monday night, enable end users to travel Monday morning, get registered, and then hit it hard Monday night into Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. But yeah, it's going to be back in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms, which, as you
Yay.
probably know, is right next to Disney World. So if you
And
bring your
Universal.
family, it's literally next door. John
Yeah.
Seifert told me that they've rented the whole place out. So there won't be any Sage nerds walking around this time. It'll be all Dynamics people. And that's a nice
Okay.
facility. The Gaylord Palms is a nice facility. It's right on I-4 there near Kissimmee. So get signed up and get your hotel
Yeah.
figured out.
It makes
Yeah,
a big difference because we stayed off site because we registered late, and
right,
oh my gosh, it's so much easier if you can just be there at the Gaylord and attend the conferences. And I think it does just take a couple days because it is a lot of walking and just inside the Gaylord, like you need a
right.
map, literally.
It, yeah, it's a big, big place. All those Gaylord properties are huge, and this one's no
Mhm.
exception. So bring your walking shoes to Orlando, and hopefully we'll skip all the
Yeah,
hurricane stuff this time around
no
and
hurricanes.
make it fun. Yeah, hurricanes never fun, but it's part of life here
Yeah.
in the great state of Florida.
All right. Well, anything else to say, Bob, and about
No,
this?
I think generally speaking, it was a good show, and I always enjoy getting together for Summit. I've been doing it for so long, and I'm looking forward to next year already. But the show overall was great, and I thought San Antonio was an excellent choice. And I know the folks at Dynamic Communities worked hard. John and Michael and Danielle and the rest of them worked hard. So yeah, they
Yeah,
you plan so many weeks for this show, and then poof, in a week it's gone.
it's
But
over. Yeah.
next year will
Right.
be fun and well attended, and Orlando is an easy place to get to. So put it on your calendar now, the week of October 19th, and be ready for
Yeah.
another advanced networking opportunity here in Central Florida, because it will be one to remember.
Yeah. I can just say I still feel a little bit of a buzz from last week, still the excitement
Yeah,
and everything. Just it was tiring, but it's such a great event to see everybody. And I just feel like I missed not seeing everybody I wanted to see,
I know.
so
I know. And I think if you come home from an event like that and you're not physically and mentally exhausted, you probably didn't do it correctly. I came home
yeah.
exhausted. I did nothing this past weekend but watch football and lay around because I
Yeah.
just needed a couple
That's
days.
what put your feet up. I had blisters. Even though I had good walking shoes, I still had
Right.
blisters.
Yeah. I
So
got my steps in every single day. It was great.
All right, Bob. Well, thanks so much for joining this episode of ISV Talks. As always, it's a pleasure to have you again as part of our crew on the GP panel too that we did this past year. So thanks so much. I'm looking forward to next year. We'll see what we do next year. So thanks, friends, for joining this episode. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.